May the words of my mouth, the thoughts in our minds, and the feelings in all our hearts be true to your word. Amen. Good morning again, and thank you for the opportunity to come and worship and see everybody. It's a time, I think, from the journey the church has here, your church, my church, a time of the season where in the fourth week of since Epiphany, and Epiphany being the celebration of Jesus coming into the human world, it's usually a period of time of about 9 weeks in the Christian year, which ends in the Transfiguration Sunday. And it's a journey time of reflection for us to determine how we will shine through, just as Jesus does, as he was transfigured. And he showed himself to the 3 disciples in radiant glory. It's a time where we look forward with a hope for a better future, a hope for a safer world, a hope for God's love to spread among us and across the world. In starting my talk this morning, I'd like to read a couple of paragraphs I came across not long ago. In listening to it, I ask you to pay attention to the detail of it, to see if any of it resonates with you. I'll give you a heads up that there is a twist at the end of it. Quoting, "It is not necessary for me to tell you that today we live in a changing world and a changing society. We are all aware of this. We are also very much aware of the tension that exists in life between nations, between people. In our society today, is there any place for the Church of Jesus Christ? Is it needed, or is it a leech on society? Does it have something to offer people and society, or is it an irrelevant appendage that comes to us out of past ages that we hesitate to do away with? Probably we should ask, what is the church? This is one that is being asked by those within and without, because traditional concepts and ideas about the church are proving inadequate for, here's the twist, are proving inadequate for 1968. Unquote. So let me digress. With Dad's, you know what, Barry, I'm going to kill you. I'm getting it. I'll get through. So with Dad's passing, Mom is trying to purge. And every time we get a visit, I get another pile of books, much to my wife's, Dale's, dismay. One recent trip, Mom handed me an old file, and it had a bunch of Dad's sermons. In going through them, I came across the one I drew this excerpt from, which I read this morning. One might think that this reading, for me, would have been inspirational. In fact, for me, it had quite the opposite effect. I found it most depressing, actually, because I think one could successfully and easily argue that all you had to do was change the date from 1968 to 2018, and the paragraphs would be totally relevant, and very much a part of today's discussion about the state the world is in and the role of the church in today's society. Not a lot of hope instilled there, is that? The tension in the world, between people, between nations. Is the church relevant, or is it just an irrelevant appendage? Don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty hopeless about now. How am I doing so far? Providing a sense of hope that as we go into the next busy church season. It's so easy to despair. It's so easy to go negative. It's so easy to go to dark places It's so easy to be consumed by all the bad news, the fake news that is reported, and we lose all hope. And that is why it is so very important for us to have hope in our lives. Important to us as human beings, important to us as God's children. We need to take time where we are reminded of the hope that Christ brings to the world. In Jeremiah, we hear words full of hope as the Lord commits to fulfilling his promises, that Judah will be saved and Jerusalem will live in safety. In Luke, it's all about the hope for the future. The Son of Man coming in a cloud of power and glory. Your redemption is drawing near. Watch for the signs. Jesus makes the ultimate promise of hope when he says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Jesus' words of love, of hope, of peace, of salvation are there for us forever and ever. But get real, Phil. Come on. That was over 2,000 years ago. How long do we have to wait? I can't even wait for supper. It certainly wasn't better in 1968, and look at the mess we're at in 2018. It's so easy to be negative. Where is God? Look at all the bad and challenging things happening. Why do these things happen? I read recently that the Bible avoids telling us why things happen. Now, for me, that would take a lot more research to fully understand that, but when people throw up their hands and can't explain things and hide behind the saying, it's God's will, I have a lot of difficulty with that. How can a loving God intentionally cause suffering? My view may be a bit too practical, but the reality is God did not make us perfect. God made us human with all our warts and issues. God did not make the world perfect. Bad things are going to happen as a result. This is a bit of an aside, but can you imagine living in a perfect world? When you think about it, maybe that's not so practical. Because reality, your definition of a perfect world would be different than your neighbor's, would be different than mine. But I digress. But why? It's hopeless. One of my favorite authors is Philip Yancey. First off, because he has a great name. But secondly, he's an easy read and tackles some of the bigger questions. He wrote the book, The Question That Never Goes Away. Why? Why do bad things happen? Why is there all this crisis in the world today? You know, you read the whole book, and Yancey does not actually answer the question why. It's interesting, though, because he says he avoids trying to answer the question why, because any attempt will inevitably fall short and maybe even rub salt in an open wound. He does come close, though, and I will quote a passage from his book. Virtually every passage on suffering in the New Testament deflects the emphasis from cause to response. Although we cannot grasp the master plan of the universe, which allows for so much evil and pain, i.e. the why question, we can respond in two important ways. First, we can find meaning in the midst of suffering. Second, we can offer real and practical help to those in need. Unquote there. Meaning in the midst of suffering. I want to be careful on this as well. I have not walked in your shoes. I don't know your sufferings. And as Philip said, I don't want to rub salt. But what I believe he is trying to say here is that there are learnings that come from sufferings. Mom always used to say, every dark cloud has a silver lining. No matter how dark a situation, what bright light can we find to provide that sense of hope to allow us to carry on? The boy on the beach. Does that ring a bell? The boy on a beach a year or two ago? Who's heard of him? 3-year-old Alan, Syrian refugee, lying face down on the beach. A picture that will haunt the world forever. Alan drowned with most of his family trying to escape Syria. How do you find a bright light in that one? As a father, I'm not sure I could. But Alan's father, in total agony, said that only if this woke the world up to what was happening and respond could he find any semblance of peace. It is claimed that this picture did in fact spur the world to action. We can offer real and practical help to those in need. Children's TV personality Fred Rogers said that when he was a little boy and heard about an accident or disaster, his mother, see, mothers are so important, would tell him, look for the helpers. Whenever something bad happens, there are always people who hurry to help. Firefighters, neighbors, medical personnel, police always run toward the disasters. Some runners from Boston Marathon bombing just kept running to the nearest hospital to give blood. You'll remember the tsunami in Japan. The Japanese have a name for their misfit generation. They're called freeders. Freeders. Freeders who choose unchallenging, dead-end careers, who mooch off their parents, some of them never venturing out into their bedrooms. To everyone's surprise, this generation awoke as if from a sleep after the tsunami. They volunteered at shelters and food distribution centers, donated money, and used their social networking skills to reunite displaced families. Closer to home, a few people started talking about helping out the Syrian refugees, and now you're on the list to sponsor. The Gleaners helping to feed the world, the clothing drive, food bank support, the Love Nan project, student education support. Look for the helpers. These may be just the kinds of signs that Jesus was telling us to look for. There will be signs in the moon, the sun, and the stars. Watch for the signs in the budding fig tree. Summer will be near. Signs which provide us with the sense of hope that we so dearly want and so dearly need. Look for the helpers, Fred's mom said. They are always there. A sign that God is there. A silver lining in dark times. A sign of hope that keeps us alive. But one thing is for certain, is that we will always have our challenges. It is how we respond that is so important. Attitude is so important when it comes to facing challenges. I'm not sure if this is politically correct these days, and I'm not sure if you've heard the expression first world problem. I often say that, first world problem, to myself when I perceive a problem or issue to be significant for me, and just to help put things in perspective. There are a lot of people in third world countries that face life and death every day. My issues pale in comparison. So is the church relevant today? We have our challenges there, but I think it can be. Is the world changing? You bet. So the church does need to evolve as well. Do we know the master plan? Not really. And as much as we desperately want to know why, we don't. But it is as German theologian Jürgen Moltmann wrote. I love this one. It is through faith that we find the path of true life, but it is only hope that keeps us on that path. We know we have our faith, and thus we have our hope. Meaning in the midst of suffering, real and practical ways to help those in needs, signs of faith, signs of love, signs of hope. God is here. Know that we are loved. Know that we are not alone. Amen.